Hi, this is Olivia Pelletier, and this is my travel video for the Spain and Portugal trip. When we first arrived to Madrid, it reminded me a lot of New York City. The city itself was a lot more modernized than I had thought. Our welcome dinner was a great way to get immersed into the culture right away. From the food and language to the flamenco dancers and atmosphere, it was a great start to the trip. The language barrier was a lot more difficult than I had imagined, as there were few people who spoke English, and my Spanish was almost non-existent. I immediately realized how popular the ham and cured meat was in Spain, and tried a ham sandwich, which I loved, at one of the first stops. The walking tours in Madrid allowed us to see famous places and areas such as the Real Palace, Puerta del Sol, and Gran Via. As we continued our walking tours through Madrid, I found all the buildings and architecture so beautiful, and the streets, shops, and even bathrooms were exponentially cleaner than in the States, which I thought was interesting. Santiago Church was the first Catholic church we visited, and I was surprised at how similar it was to the Catholic churches here in the States. It reminded me a lot of the church I was baptized in. One of the stops was Botan Restaurant, which was built in 1725 and is the oldest restaurant in the world, which has received many awards and recognitions. As we were walking around, I found that most of the people were very friendly and really liked that we were Americans, which I didn't expect. There were a lot of restaurants that were extremely friendly and accommodating to the language barrier. The food was absolutely amazing everywhere we went. It was interesting to see the cultural differences at restaurants, although we got used to them quickly. Visiting Toledo was one of my favorite parts of the entire trip. I really enjoyed being able to see the countryside of Spain. The views were breathtaking. We were able to cross the bridge over the Tagus River and climb all the way to the top of Toledo, where we visited the metal company. We were able to see them heating and shaping the swords, artisans working on intricate jewelry pieces, using the famous technique of damasquinado, which is the incrustation of precious metals on steel. Toledo was the first place I tried paella, and I loved it. Continuing through Toledo, the cathedral was my favorite tourist stop because of the history and breathtaking architecture. I liked that we were able to go through the entire cathedral and learn about the history and the different stories behind the building of the cathedral. BMW was my favorite business meeting in Madrid because I felt like we really saw all aspects of the company, and the CEO also mentioned that BMW Madrid funds hospice facilities in Africa for patients with HIV. Being on the healthcare management track, I thought it was awesome that a business with a completely different industry was able to connect with my focus. When we arrived in Portugal, I had great vibes right away. The street tiles were so intricate, and the buildings made you feel like you were really in Europe. The seafood in Portugal was amazing. They were known for their salted cod. I liked how there were so many different types of restaurants and shops. I found that there are more authentic stores in Lisbon than Madrid. For example, I learned that Portugal is known for their handmade wedding gowns and formal dresses. The town squares were full of life, and I liked that there are so many different types of shops and restaurants, most of which spoke English. The first day that we got lunch in Lisbon, I tried seafood chowder with shrimp, mussels, and lobster, as well as some smoked salmon at a different restaurant. The froyo and desserts were also something that Portugal was known for, which were all very good. The Castle of São Jorge in Lisbon had some of the best views. You could see where the water and the land met, and the bridge that was contracted by the same architect that designed the Golden Gate Bridge in California. The castle itself was amazing, and I liked that we were able to walk around and go through it. I also really liked there were simpler things that we were able to see, like the famous orange trees, the peacocks that lived in the park, and the lavender plants. This was a moment for me where the first time I really stopped and smelled the roses and reflected on how lucky I was to have these experiences. Visiting Sintra was also one of my favorite experiences of the trip because everything from the food to the people were authentic and genuine. Pina Park, where the Moorish castle was, I thought that tour was really interesting because of all of the Roman architecture and the Greek mythology-inspired statues. I took Latin for 4 years in high school, so this really tied into a lot of the mythology and architecture that I had only learned about in books prior to seeing it in person. Learning some of the history of the royal family was also really interesting. Visiting Paseo Belmonte was fun because we were able to see one of the only structures that was minimally damaged by the earthquake, leaving almost all of its original shape. The idea to turn a castle into a hotel was brilliant in my opinion because not only was it absolutely beautiful, the hotel is definitely very profitable. We were able to go up some very small stairs to be able to see the rooftop view out of one of the suites at Paseo Belmonte. These views were absolutely breathtaking. You could see a lot of the buildings that were damaged by the earthquake, some that had still not been recovered. This day was one of the best days in terms of weather, and I was so happy we were able to see this view with some sunlight. Although the meeting wasn't what we had initially intended, we were able to explore the area a little bit more. We stopped at a coffee shop across from the hotel and got one of their famous cappuccinos. We learned fairly quickly in Portugal that espresso was very important. We also got a quick piano show from Ben while we waited for some rain. My favorite business trip in Portugal was a Morum Cork factory. This was my favorite visit, not just because of what we learned, but because our presenter Joanna was the most passionate about her job than any other speaker at all the companies we visited. I really appreciated her love and passion for the company and what she does. Overall, this experience has been one that I will never forget, and I'm so happy that my first time in Europe was everything I could have ever wanted and more. I definitely plan to come back.